Exhibit in the other job is not one that pays off. It's called extinction or punishment. And so a whole different way of looking at it. Not that this is going to be a job that lasts for a lifetime. But no, I told the people when they left, just if you lose it, don't even bother calling, just come. That we run this thing every day from 9 to 12 and then 1 to 5 and going out and interview. So just come in at 9 o'clock. So the important thing is that you have a job, not that you just obtained it, and that you've been working there for 7 years. So this time, used a different population, job handicap. And you drew that from several different sources. Again, it was a large number, I forget what, 100 or so. And we got them from ex-mental hospital patients from community shelter health, also retarded institution, but of course not the profound or the severe. These were people who were at the level of the mild retardation, that is, they could speak and they had receptive language. And also DVR, if you're familiar with that phrase, Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, where you apply if you have some disability, primarily physical, but also emotional. And they have a list of people, and their usual effort is not to place them in jobs so much as vocational training. And so what happens is they're going to send them to school, and then they get out of school, and they're in the same position as they were in before they went to school. And then nobody will hire them because of their physical or emotional handicap. But we got the patients from DVR, also from the local prison, the early release program, because these people living in criminal records had a very difficult time in finding jobs. As soon as they saw that their name was on the list, they checked off on their questionnaire that they had been convicted. They were out of luck. And then also the local addiction groups. There's the AA groups and the Synanon and the other groups. So got them all from that, and then that was somewhat after the Vietnamese War. I think of the Vietnamese veterans. They were persona non grata at the time, and nobody wanted to touch them. Felt they were persecutors. And so we assembled people from all that, and then the physically handicapped, of course. So some people they had one arm, one leg, one arm and dead. So that was a very challenging kind of a group. And did the same thing this time, and then randomly assigned them to either the job type of program, or, and this time not just looking for a job in their own, but for the rah-rah kind of procedures, commercially available tape. We found energizing and motivating job seekers. And the results of that came out similarly good. It was something like 93%, 93 or 95%, I think it was. And something like 25–30% that found a job through their local agency. Well, the federal government heard about this. Somebody had read about it and suggested maybe this could be of use to the federal government in their welfare program. Because one of the requirements of the welfare program, the U.S. welfare program, especially the program called Aid to Families of Dependent Children, the AFDC program it was called at the time, was that they engage in a job search before the government provided charity to them. And if they were capable of working, that is, the children that they had were over a certain period, a certain age, over 2 or 3, or they didn't, or whatever it was, they had this cutoff date, but that they had to show that they could not find a job. And so they asked if I could try that out in their program. So they asked me, so I came down to Washington, and they said they'd like me to try this thing out on a national basis. And what would it take, and what they would like? Well, first of all, what would it take? I said, no problem, I'll do it for nothing. I'm getting paid a salary. And they said, no, we don't do business that way. You don't do things for nothing. So, okay. So I made things very comfortable for them. But then they said what they wanted it done is they wanted it done in 5 different cities that had special employment problems. So one of them was Harlem, New York, which of course continuously has an employment problem. The other was Tacoma, Seattle, Washington, with a Boeing aircraft plant was. They laid off everyone. They had something like a 14% unemployment rate. And then Milwaukee, Wisconsin, I forget what the reason was, but similarly, they were on very hard times. And then there was one city in New Jersey, see which city was it was almost, it was a full industrial city, and it was almost a ghost town. But they all had very high unemployment rates. And then they also chose, for some reason, Topeka, Kansas, because Senator Dole was on the committee that governed the disbursement of funds. And he was down if the rest of the country was going to get the funds for that. But they didn't have a serious employment problem at all. So we had those five cities, and I had my counselors go out to those cities and to establish that they randomly assigned people to either the agency's program or to this program. So we were doing things at a distance. And oddly enough, a large number of people, a large percentage of the people, volunteered to be in the program, even though the law said that because they had children underage or some other reason, they did not have to. So they were called voluntary. They were not mandated to take part in it, but they did. So we did that, and again, we got the same wonderful results, and that as long as they attended, you got a job. The average amount of time to take a job was less than 2 weeks, incidentally, compared to salary differences. You can read that in the articles. But so they were good jobs. They were at least better than the others, and it was night and day between the two. Well, so then the government made that, as a result of that, it made that a mandatory requirement. Anybody who's in the AFDC program has to be in that. And so for a while it was mandated, up until I haven't followed it anymore. I'm doing so many other things, but it was a mandatory requirement. And there was a local area where I came to Fort Lauderdale. It was a mandatory requirement there. Many years later. And it's had very wide dissemination. When we were in Australia, remember, we were riding by the bus with the big banner up there. Unemployed, join the job club. Same thing in England, right? We keep reading comedies and stories. Hey, something's wrong with you. You got to go to the job club. And it's just adopted by entire countries. We were invited out to Scandinavia recently because they also have it as a mandated program in Norway and Sweden. And so they invited me out there to talk of it. And there was, well, so it's very widely used, right? It's not a matter of cited or something. And so that did it. I mean, and when you broke it down in terms of the subcategories, the retarded, the mentally ill, the handicapped, the physically handicapped, it was way up there, bouncing around 90% for everyone. And so things came full circle, right? And so we're working with retarded. If they are in that borderline area where they can at least dribble the line, there is a way of getting the thing done. And what happened was an entire cadre of people then came into existence to become job club counselors. And many of the people who worked for agencies, as almost all counselors do, they went off on their own. And they made up contracts with local agencies, especially those that were giving welfare, have a welfare program. They made that a requirement, and they hired these counselors to conduct the job club as independent contractors, where they did it and paid them in terms of placements, right? Only if you succeed, only if you place them, not paying them as DBR and the State Employment Service does, but you get a salary regardless of that. So, I'm really proud of on a social basis, probably as proud of that particular accomplishment as anything else. How to get people into the mainstream. And you use that in the counseling. If you go and you have marriages that are in trouble because one partner is subordinating the other, get a job. Then you don't have to listen to him. You have teenagers who are getting into trouble. It's an alternative source of reinforcement. Get a job. Get a legal job and you're being sent up for life. So whatever it is that you're working on, employment, remunerative employment, not make-believe employment, not contrived employment, but getting right into the job market. So that's been a source of great gratification. It's not a small population. It's everybody. It's like toilet training. Everybody's got to be toilet trained. Everybody's got to work. Well, okay, is this a good time to take a... Well, it's only been 1 hour. Okay.
Whatever you want to.
No, that's fine. We started at 1, so we'll go ahead about halfway to 2:30 or so.
Okay, sure.
Okay, I have a list of about, I got a list of 15 different problem areas in which to make some innovation. And I'm not sure which one to go to next. But hey, let's take the one that's probably the next most universal type of activity. Besides being toilet trained and learning self-care skills and having a job, getting married. Not getting married, but marital happiness, right? Having a harmonious marriage. And that's not something where I was the originator. The person who first did the work on that was Dick Stewart, and he's a fantastic article. And I remember when that article came out, I said, my God, and I did a review of the literature to see what other outcome studies had been done. None. There's a journal of marital and family therapy. People get degrees in marital counseling. And it's just like the case with the job finding. One of the depressing things about the job finding is that in the recent literature reviews that I've done on that, there haven't been any other outcome studies. None. And I'm really less interested in that particular method being disseminated than that it served as a spur to start doing any experimental studies in that. I did find one study recently, 10, 15 years ago, where somebody compared the most common governmental method of placing people, and that is this job priming. This was especially true after the Second World War and after the First World War, where the government starts a program, places you in an industry, and pays the employer your entire salary or most of your salary. The rationale just seems unbeatable. That is, you're now getting the people into the workforce, you're becoming accustomed to keeping hours and working in an employee status and gaining experience. The employer now is learning how valuable they are, and when the 6th month, which is the common period they do this for, is up, they will then hire them. And so there was a wonderful study that was done, and incredibly it was done with mental hospital patients. It was done by the VA, the people who were in their psychiatric hospitals, and when they were discharged, now had people randomly assigned and put them either in the government-sponsored program, this job priming program, or not. And they followed them up. And of course, during the first month, it was a night and day difference. The people who were in the job, who were in the priming program, they all had jobs. The people who were not didn't. At the end of something like 6 months, they were almost the same, and then by the end of a year, it was the same percentage employed. And so, if it seems like this is an easy area, it isn't. And they did the same thing. That they thought that the important thing was that they go and they have skills and they have the employment, and that looks like it's contrary to their theory and mine. It looks like that just wasn't the case. We're getting back to the marrow, so I'm having afterthoughts. Dick Stewart did this study, and it was wonderful. It didn't have any control group. He used essentially an A/B design. He took some measures of the amount of communication that they had in those as a principal measure, and then used a very sensible procedure. He tried to arrange within the natural context of a marriage a quid pro quo. You do this, I do that. If you do this, I'll do that, right? Which is another way of saying mutual reinforcement. And he used the same one for all wives and all husbands, and the one he used, I heard some rather adverse comments about it. It sounded awfully, in our terms, awfully sexist. But the basic concept was there, and that is you exchange reinforcements. The response, what you want as a response, what you want as a response, you will then give to your partner if your partner gives you what you want. And so it's mutual reinforcement. It's something you can call it contracting, which sounds awfully commercial, another more neutral term that's come up in the literature called behavioral exchange. And you're exchanging desirable behaviors, giving something you like for something the other person likes. Well, that was really an eye-opener. arguments. I mean, they broke the ice, and they say as a result of that, I looked at the literature to see just what other outcome studies had been done, and sure enough, that was an icebreaker. That there weren't any others, in spite of the fact that marital counseling was a separate field, and people gave advice awfully freely, whether it was in the form of Ann Landers or whether it was in the form of a professional counselor. So I started on that, but I added a number of things, and I wanted to talk about that. And then, again, what is it that's involved? What's involved in marriage? And again, and try to conceptualize it. And then, why do you get married? Start right at the beginning, just as in the case. Why do you bother getting married? What is it different that happens in marriage? Trying to state it in behavioral terms. Then I came up with a perhaps simplistic solution, which when I mentioned it to Stuart, he just laughed and thought it was overly simplistic. And that is that it's an increase of reinforcement. That more reinforcement will result in the marriage than otherwise. It may be economic, it may be social, it may be in terms of children, it may be in terms of other, whatever it is, or maybe social influences, but it's an increase in the reinforcement. And stated in that way, what it says, if we're talking not about getting married, which I'm not, I'm talking about how to maintain a continuing harmonious marriage, then what it says, increase the reinforcement. Fine. And the kind of logic that Stuart spelled out sounds wonderful. Now he used just two different reinforcers according to our current criteria. It sounds manipulative. In fact, somebody tells me he even used the phrase organized prostitution. That it was in exchange for sexual favors, the male would listen to conversation. And so that seemed awfully crude. But the basic idea is there, behavioral exchange. And so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a list of reinforcers, and again, to try to prime it rather than do it. I made up a checklist, and this was this happiness checklist, and I don't know, Brad, I think we actually used that, didn't we, for you?
With my wife?
No,
it's the other way, I don't know.
Brad, it's more than we wanted to know.
It's a behaviorist, and I make up a test called the marital happiness inventory. But what it did was it outlined several categories of interaction, which I thought was fairly exhaustive. And that was sexual, communication, social, vocational, independence was one of them. Another was we called habits, that was really drugs or alcohol. It listed all the number of things that seemed, and the other was children. I forget, there were about 10 of them. And each one of them had them rated on I call it a Likert scale. What percentage happiness, what percentage satisfaction, which is another layperson thought that I would say, what percentage reinforcement are you getting from that? But I didn't want to give reinforcement. They think I was talking about troops rushing to the front. And so they would circle which ones it was, how much happiness they were, how much satisfaction they had in each area. Now, and in an instant, without the benefit of any type of scoring procedure, you just look at it and immediately look, right? Communication is their problem, right? Or children is their problem, or social. And immediately you could go and work on that, and then ask them now on that area that is such a problem. Is there anything that you would like and that you could give in return from her list, or vice versa? And so that way you could organize the behavioral exchange. And each round would now be addressing their major problem, and would be addressing, and with major problems, and also they could get to the others, and you could either start with the one that was least major, that is the minor one, to make it easy for them to do one or the other. But either one, it was all done in a very organized way, all stemming from that idea. Marriage is, you're in it, and you'll stay in it, as long as it is more reinforcing than the alternative, which is getting out of that marriage. So increase all the reinforcement. In other words, to give them a more accurate focus on the reinforcers that were there, had another procedure, and we call that reciprocity awareness, right? And that was the most powerful procedure there is. And that is, had divided a sheet of paper lined 8 by 11 across, in the middle, and on each one, on the left side, things I do to please him, things he does please me, or has done to please me, and she does the same thing. And after they've made that list, very often they look at that and say, my God, why am I here? I mean, I'm getting so much. I'm getting so much, and he's doing so much for me, or she's doing so much for me. In other words, you're emphasizing the existing reinforcements that exist. What is it in there? And so that when people come in, what they want to do is to list all their problems, and of course they have all these marital adjustment inventories. They ask them to list their problems. But this is taking the opposite tack. What are the satisfactions that you are obtaining? And so that's one of the first things to start. We change the entire focus, not tell me your problems, but tell me what's good in your marriage, and in terms of that checklist, what is it that needs to be improved? And that's all. No talking about problems, no finding out, we're not here, I'm not here to play judge or jury and say who's right or who's wrong, but I want to increase the reinforcement for both of you. And so have them exchange these, and by making it specific, social, vocational, monetary, children, household responsibility, but now it's specific. You know, by doing that, they can now name things specifically in these things and not talk about, I don't know, he doesn't give me credit for something, you know, or he doesn't take, or she doesn't understand me. So I'm sure those things are meaningful to somebody, but in terms of doing something, about it, getting more specific about what is it that you would like. And once you start getting specific, they find it very easy. Oh, is that bothered you? I didn't know that bothered you that much. Sure. And they start making suggestions. And so by making it specific so that it gives them, and by having them emphasize the positive now, then what can you do to go to increase that rating that he has from 50% to 70%? And so, and again, very structured. Everything's structured. Nothing is given in just in terms of general advice. And then also, want to go into communication is a special category, and that was and Stewart in his study mentioned that he worked on communication, but he didn't say what he did. How do you approach the whole notion of communication from a reinforcement point of view? One of them, because if you look at, and sociologists have done many studies in marital relationships, and when they talk about what areas are of greatest concern, communication is almost always in 1 or 2. It's the top problem. So, and so what is it that you do? And pretty obviously, if you want reinforcements to increase, you have to find out what it is that your partner wants. And when you want something, you want your reinforcement, you have to communicate. So communication is essential. Departing from that one simplified, simplistic, ridiculous generalization that the purpose of marriage is to increase your happiness, to increase your reinforcement. So how do you ask for them? And so we developed a procedure for how you ask for them. And we actually gave it a name, and we use that in the juvenile, in the things that we did with youth. I'm looking at Brad Donahue, we work together with youth. We use the very same procedures with working with youth and parents. You want something, how do you ask for it? When you want something of your children, how do you ask for it? Because you have to communicate it in a way that is not going to be confrontational and antagonistic. So, we had a number. One of them is to go into talk about what the problem is, if there is one. Well, no, the positive, you say what you want, but then we revise that, because what happened is whatever wording you use, if you want something badly and you're upset about it, the way you say it, and then the tone of it is just going to be so negative and so critical that it's just not going to be a request. It's going to lead to a confrontation, and then it's going to be aversive. It's going to be technical about it. And so the first part of it was to go to do these simple relaxation exercises, and that the people in behavior therapy actually have worked that out very nicely, but looking at it from an opera point of view. You do the antithesis of what it is that you do when you're angry. One of the things you do when you're angry is you hold your breath. That's what people tend to do. They hold their breath, either inhaling or exhaling. The other is their muscles become tense. You grip, their jaws get tight, you grip things tightly. And so just doing a very brief, simple exercise, not the whole progressive muscle relaxation, a simple exercise of breathing. Breathe slow, inhale, don't hold, let it roll over. Use a visual. Inhale, it by demonstration. Here, I'm tense now. Tell me which parts of my body is it that look as if they're tense. And they tell you, your jaw, your hands, right? Your legs are folded, whatever. And they get really good at it, so now so it's like teaching a dog, right? And the toilet training, you have them, the best way you learn by teaching. And so you do very brief relaxation, and that makes all the difference in the world. Now, whatever they say, it's not going to come out with all of that anger. And the first thing is to go to state what it is that you would like. And to be descriptive. It's going to be specific, and it has to act for specific behavior. It can't be a trait. It has to be some action that you want, right? That's all straightforward behaviorism. And so you ask for it. I would like you to go to take care of the children. Okay, let's make it more specific. That's great. It's children, and you talk about taking care of them. Can you talk about what days or what hours, or which children, if you have more than one? Get them to make it as specific as possible, and then have the other respond to it. We have people teach them how, and the way how to communicate. You say, why is reinforcing to you? And that's very easy, because I think it's a woman's job, or I think it's a guy's job particularly. But now, the real twist to this, and I borrowed this from somebody else, and so I wish I could take credit for devising it. Why is it that the state, if they do grant the request, why it'll be reinforcing to them? So you turn the whole thing around. Right? I want you to take care of the children. And I say, why is reinforcing? Well, because when you take care of the children, I'll have time to go make that special kind of meal that you like. Or whatever it is. But state something, why it's reinforcing to them. Or to use that thing, like we use that thing in terms of job finding, right? You ask your job for a raise, you ask your employer for a raise. Why is it and as you'd like to have a raise? Why is it reinforcing it? Well, I get that kind of money, I might be willing to work Saturday, Sunday, overtime, or holidays when you have a rush, and somebody's out sick, I'm willing to come in to please take the money, take the money. So you make sure it's left at the behavioral level, right? Not an attitude, right? Which they can't do anything with. Not that there's anything wrong with attitudes that one people have. The person doesn't know whether they can agree with it or not because it's not specific enough. And then make it clear that what it is that you want, why it is that you're asking for it, and it's not a whim, that it is some genuine reinforcement. And by saying why you're doing it, they may think of something else, and that is that's going to give you time to go and do that. They come back and say, oh, well, as an alternative, how about if I take care of something or do this other thing, or you go and you make the dinner afterward, I don't mind waiting until 8 o'clock. You could suggest something else. So those are the rules. You make the request, it has to be for an action, it can't be a trait, it has to talk about doing something, not I want you to stop doing something, you want it to be a positive action. And then you state what the benefit is going to be to yourself, what the benefit would be to the other, and then the other is alternatives. And that follows the general rule that when there are several possible responses to the bill, then you're more likely to accept one of them, then you have only one alternative, and that's a general finding that when alternative response is available, you now have a great, you're more likely to go to choosing one of them. So that was one. So that we call a positive request rule. Right? We had another, and then another part was how do you react to aversive stimulation? Right? Again, think when you say only in behavioral conceptual terms, and that is that, and again, in terms of when somebody criticizes you or says something about you, then how do you react? Well, of course, the usual way of reacting is to retaliate, and then what you have, and then it's usually destructive, and the marriage may be the casualty. So you want some alternative to that, but of course, just extinction. That they keep calling you a bitch or stupid or whatever. That eventually, if you don't say anything, they'll stop, and maybe they will, and maybe they won't. And so extinction won't work. Is really not an alternative. It's not going to discourage that technique. So you want to have some way of reacting to it, and yet if you do, you have retaliation, call them a name, do something else violent to it. and then it escalates. There's a kind of thing Patterson has called as reciprocal coercion. And that you will then, and it's right, that if you do come with something sufficiently aversive, they never will say it again, but that now means that your basic categorization of marriage and why you're staying in it is likely to be endangered. That marriage is now giving you all these reinforcers, right? It's resulting in all these aversive stimuli as well. So we had rules on that too, and one of them was to, just to give a sample of it without torturing you with all the detail, go and agree with some part of it, not with the entire part of it. And in fact, it's synonymous with people in assertiveness training have called the understanding statement. And understanding, what it's doing is saying what part of what it is that they did you can agree with, or what part of what part of the circumstances that led to you saying that you can do it. That is, so it may be that they do something, and then I can understand that you're upset, you didn't get much sleep last night, you got that sickness that you're suffering from, or the children bothered you so much. But you're not agreeing that you're stupid, and you're not assuming that you're a bitch. But you just say that you can understand why they were upset about it. And so there's and then you go on then to go and define the solution to it. So we know a number of these communication rules, all stemming completely from the behavioral analysis, not from the assertiveness training or from science, from the family counseling people, the marriage counseling people, the dealing with the communication part of it. So that was a major part of it, since communication was just underlying almost everything, because almost all of the other problems that they have, if communication about them could occur in a constructive fashion without the aversive stimulation, then resolution could be reached in all these other areas like household responsibilities and financial care of the children, that they could all follow on that. Well, and what we did is that had them go and fill out these questionnaires on a weekly basis, or once a week, according to the limitations of insurance, and so they had continuous feedback as to what the state of satisfaction was of their partner, and then had them also we gave them that list of that reciprocity awareness, where they listed all of the things that their partner has been or is doing for them, and vice versa, that they take that home and make that list. And so they had homework assignments, and that's a general characteristic of all of the young patients. It was true of the job club, and they came in and they made up that list of all the appointments they had, and now you have therapy assignments, right? You have to go to those interviews, you have to contact those people that you have called back. So it's the same thing here, and that is that the things that they had agreed to, that you now do them, and that you keep a record and give them forms of it where they will write down the extent to which they did do these things. And there's this wonderful thing that's happened in the field of self-recording in terms of outpatient therapy, is this recording facilitation. And it's been found empirically by others, not by me, that when people record the problems or the desirable actions, that moves them in the direction of desirability. If you count the number of cigarettes that you smoke a day, it's it. If you weigh yourself every day, then that will lead you to have a better result on that. But the same thing is even true of these other things. How many compliments did you give? And that's one of the assignments. We're going to give compliments in terms of communication. So one increase of reinforcement, or the simplest way of doing it, is compliments. And we divide that into two categories. Compliments that can be something regarding some trait, some behaviors that they had, and the other appreciations, which now is completely according to the reinforcement analysis. When someone does something for you, say thank you, or whatever, I appreciate it, or great. And so your partner does something for you, be sure you do it. And so you had them, remember, we had them list all of those things on the reciprocity awareness, and one of the little games that we play on that was after they list all these things, when they list the things that they call them, what my partner does for me, and then they go, oh yeah, she makes the particular food that I like, even though she may not. And have you told her that you appreciate it? I can't remember. Has she told you? No. Could you please tell her no? I know, don't tell me. Don't look at her in the eye. Tell her. And so you're practicing, right? This idea of not relying on vague instructions, but rehearse it right in the session, and have them go back and forth and keep doing it. And so all of these things that they had listed, and giving the, so we're talking about therapy assignments, and then all those other things that were listed down there, they're going to, for them to do that at home, and all the things that were listed down there about what it is that their partner has done at least sometime in the past for them, to express appreciation, and give them whatever words they want. That was neat, that was great, that was wonderful, I really liked that. But whatever their current dialogue selects in terms of the particular words. So, and that usually is how we usually just start right off. That's the first thing, and it just starts things out beautifully. It makes them aware of all the positive things instead of talking about the problems, which they really want you to play arbiter and to be the judge and jury of, but also gets them immediately to start increasing the level of reinforcement that is now. They say, well, no, he doesn't care for me, doesn't recognize me, or she doesn't understand. Well, now they are understanding. They're giving you, they're appreciating all of the wonderful things that you have done. Well, so it added something to the purely the reinforcement exchange. There is another abstract way in which you can do that. Still, it derives from a reinforcement analysis, but it's more than just to be reinforced, this reciprocal reinforcement, and it's also that what the existing reinforcement level is and increasing the practice in the session, at least the verbal reinforcements, that is the appreciations and the compliments, but also problem-solving training, because problems do arise. There are crises that occur, and maybe financial, maybe the stockbroker, maybe one of your children's caught with drugs, or there's been some infidelity, but something happens. And so, problem solving, what to do. And so there is this wonderful procedure that's been developed in the field of outpatient therapy, and it really follows a reinforcement conceptualization beautifully. It's more than what the lay-term problem solving means. It's actually more like what the lay-term brainstorming is, where you have a problem and when you think of a solution, several solutions, and use the dictionary definition of several, and then there must be at least three. And that you don't evaluate these solutions until after you have generated several solutions. Why? And that is that if you evaluate each one of them, you'll always find something negative. If you evaluate all of them, then you choose the one that is the best. Because nothing is perfect. And to accept that fact that what you want to do is to accomplish the activity that all things considered will lead to more reinforcement and less aversive stimulation than the others. But not that in practical terms it is not possible to go and have something that will lead entirely to positive and with no negative. Well, so this problem-solving strategy is something that has been used in the past, that in the studies that we did, Brad, where we used that with the youth drug addicts, the juvenile delinquents. That turned out to be incredibly effective. I'm taught to put it in as a control procedure, and it was just so effective, and it's so simple. And you, to make it very concrete, when you have them come up with a solution, one alternative, now another, please, and they'll say, I don't think that's any good. Great. Always reinforce, but never for the quality of that. Not saying that's a good one. The whole idea is to teach them to come up with solutions, and not for you, not to really to adopt your particular standards. And so it's important that you not comment on the quality, that it's good or bad, or no, that'll get you into trouble. It's good, that's number one, and then you think of it, good, that's number two. Number three, can you think of another one? We'll make it four. You can praise them for doing that, and it's very, very specific. And then after that, now to really get into what's clear is the reinforcement behavioral analysis. On each one of them, to go and talk about what the positive results would be of that course of action, and then the negative. And use any system you want, giving a number or whatever, or just write a word down, and do that for all four of them, and then decide, well, all things considered, then which one do you want? So what you're doing is, at the imaginal level, right? Behaviorists, still, we think, right? We think, and we are verbal, and we don't have to wait to go through, try all these actions, right? We can conceptualize, we can imagine them, and we can't anticipate what the positive and negative consequences will be. And so those are some of the principal procedures that could be done on that, and other things. And again, the whole idea of the therapy assignments, some people call it homework, which unfortunately has terrible connotations. But therapy assignments, and to indicate the devil is always in the details. So when the person comes in, you don't say, hello, how are you? Or at least right after you say that, you don't say, how did things go? Say, could I please see your sheets, your recording sheets? And the recording sheets will tell you how things went. But if you say, how did things go? Everything was fine, except there was a leak in plumbing in there. And so what's it got to do with money? And so you want to keep things focused on that. And the way to do it is you have those sheets and make that the center of what your concern is, and always be reinforcing. There's some other rules, and that is the number of reinforcements that you, the therapist, give on an outpatient basis. I know going over student tapes, they say that they were creating creating a therapeutic alliance or a positive ambience. I said, but I went through your little tape in a half an hour, I didn't hear a single compliment. I didn't hear a single positive thing. Where was this? Where was this positive ambience? But you're building rapport with what? You know, with the statue. And so count the number of compliments. Just give praise all the time, and that's easy to do by saying whatever it is that they did, give a compliment. So if they come in and you gave them this assignment with a sheet to go to fill the thing in, and they say, well, I filled it in the first day, but I didn't do the rest of the day, which we think, well, why didn't you? Well, that's the end. I know I'll be back next week. And so the thing is, compliments, wonderful. Here, you did exactly right. You filled the things in here. That's complete. That's entirely the way we want them. And if you could go and try to do the same for the rest of the week next time, but here, let's try to recapitulate. That's the correction, right? What is it? Let's take the most recent. What did you do yesterday? Let's see, that was the 11th, and let's go over that and have them fill that in, right? So that they will do it. Now, and again, it's high frequency of reinforcement. Whatever it is that they're doing, let's take eliminating some more extreme cases. They come in and they only filled in one of them. Well, suppose they filled in one of them. Well, I didn't fill in any, and they show you the blank sheet. What can you reinforce them for? Well, you remember to bring the sheet in, correct? Suppose they didn't bring the sheet in. What could you reinforce them? So glad you're on time. Yes. Find something, right? Find something. You want a high frequency of reinforcement. Because in an outpatient basis, it's altogether different than working with them in an institution or caretaker status. In that case, they're a captive audience. They've got to be there. Outpatient basis, what they call engagement is probably the most important thing. And Brad, you did this study, we were working together. How do you improve engagement? Getting them motivated to take part in the therapy. Because if they're not taking part in it, it doesn't make any difference how sage your advice is or what you do. They won't be there. So having a very, very high frequency of reinforcement and keeping the things focused on the problems that you had. Well, here, I think we're well into the halfway point. If we could take a break now, or if you want to, we can not take a break and just make it questions. What would you prefer?
What do you want to do?
You have to leave there. What's your preference?
Well, do you have questions, or would you like to take? Okay, I think
we'll take a break.
Yeah, I mean your stamina made it.